and has done the position, I mean, at different levels, then we go into, is this person willing to accept the position with the job? So that is basically important to know about it, of those positions. So the other part of the process is what we do into the selections of the tools. So the selections of the tool is within the interview. These are part of the tricky questions that we get when they ask us in an interview. Uh, that they ask information, a specific information about, like, for example, what softwares do you know? And they can go as far and ask you sample questions about how do you do this using the software. Uh, because sometimes in an interview, if we have the need of that position, a lot of candidates tend to unfortunately lie and say, oh yes, I have the experience, I know this, I know that, I know whatever. So we as an interviewers cannot afford to believe everything the person is saying. That's when some companies go as far as, even before interviewing the candidate, they send an email with a link for a test, a quick test of different skills, and that helps the company to know if it, in fact, this person knows about, the skills of the test match what it says in the resume. So that is basically kind of like the tools that we can use to screen candidates, especially when there is a position and 50, 100 employees apply. Then it is important to clean the applicants and just stay with the best ones. In this part of the last process of candidates when they become an employee is, in addition to the interview, it's basically determining who is the final choice, who is the person that is going to be the best one for the job. That is the issue of sometimes what interview committees face, because when you have large interview committees, this is when it is crucial. It is good to have large interview committees. The problem is that the more people you have in the committee, the more opinions you are going to have. So sometimes it takes you longer to reach that hiring point. Who is the perfect person? Because everybody has different opinions. So sometimes it's better to have a small interview committee, but the key interviewers are the people that know about the job and people from the department, so the hiring process will go smoothly and faster. So that is something that, even though is the end process for us, basically is very important to consider it at the beginning because of that reason, because we need to know who is going to help us to hire somebody quickly, not to delay the process of interviewing and delay the process of hiring. In part of the workforce planning, we also, is important to know about the process of dedication of the position within the firm. This means basically, plain and simple, is what does the position entail, how the position basically is placed within the organizational chart of the firm, how crucial it is, how important it is. So to give you an example, it is different to hire an assistant director of the president of the company, or an assistant director of the vice president of the company, than just, for example, hiring an assistant director of the finance department. It's not that we are downgrading the importance of the position, no. But what it is important to know is the type of people at what level within the company this person is going to be working with. So in addition to a specific skills, there are additional things that we are looking for, that it would be a good match for the president, that the president will be happy with this person and they will have a good relationship, and this person will help the president with whatever it is they need to do. In the vice president is the same position. So we need to consider also personalities that will help us to determine if that person is not only the perfect candidate for the position, but is also the perfect candidate for that level of the position that you have within the company. These are basically examples that if you get involved, very, very, very much involved in what is human resources, and you are responsible for hiring and you are responsible for the employees of the company, these are examples of basically matrix and pie charts that use human resources to measure different things within the company. This help them determine the needs of the company, which departments are lacking, which employees within a department need more training, because all of these things actually even measure productivity, how the employees are doing. Some of these matrices actually they gather the information from the employment evaluations or the performance review. So it helps them determine what is the projection, what are the need, where is the need. This is actually how companies determine if they need more employees in a specific department or not. So if the department needs to expand, what are the needs? How do they expand it? What job descriptions they need to create? Because especially when a department needs to expand, we're talking that we are creating more positions. Unless, for example, uh, just to give you a basic example, for example, in a call center in a company, the way to expand is a standard, is the same thing. So the whole idea, plain and simple, is okay, we need more people that answer the phone, and we need more people that take care of the customers and answer questions. But that is different to what I'm talking about here. It is the projection is mostly a department that sees the needs for additional duties because the company has expanded. The company went from a regional company to a national company to an international company. So there are new job descriptions that need to be developed and new people that need to be hired. So all of this helps the companies to determine where do they allocate those positions, where do they hire those people, how to develop the job description, and everything else in between, including who's going to be the supervisor and how much we're going to pay to this employee. So all of this is part of the strategic plan that the company needs to follow in order to determine where the need is, in order to meet that needs. So in order to do that, they basically do a forecasting. So it's not where we are right now, but it's in the future. Where are we going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? So all of that in comparison to the charts that I showed you a few minutes ago is the same thing. You do the analysis of the trends. The most important thing of the trends is the company, where the company is, what are the competition, what is the competition doing, and all of that is forecasting in the marketing and advertisement. Let's say, for example, you sell cars, you sell Mercedes-Benz, for example. Even though, for example, Toyota is not your direct competition, because of course the price of the cars are different, the prestige of the cars and what they offer is completely different. You cannot ignore in a marketing level what Toyota is doing, because it gets to a point that maybe somebody that can afford a Mercedes Benz Maybe the person goes and say, you know what, but Toyota is giving me better services, better options, maintenance for 3 years, or whatever it is. So regardless of the competition, we cannot ignore the competition that is not on our level, because those people that are not at our level, they're always hungry for customers, and they're always thinking of how they can steal that customer from this big company, from this big organization. So the trends are there. Part of the trends, for example, using the same example of cars, is at the same thing. You sell cars that are all gas, so then you go and say, wait a minute, do I expand my selection? Do I start selling electric cars? Do I start selling diesel cars or something like that? So all that trends of analysis help you to know if you're on the right direction, or you have to change your business approach to maintain your clients and at the same time to bring new ones to grow. The part of the ratio analysis is basically determine, what do you do? How do you do it? What percentage am I going to increase in my sales? Or how many new clients I'm going to be? And that, in order for you to do that, you also need to be aware of what you're losing, because the idea is that you always have to have a balance. You know that people you always lose people. Any business always loses people. They're not happy, they leave. You're a local company, and the client moved to another city or another country or whatever it is. So all of those things are things that are always expected in an organization. But then the idea is building that balance, maintaining that balance, that when when clients leave, that you actually have clients coming in. And this is connected to also the employees, that help you to know how many employees do you have, why clients are leaving. My employees are not trained, or my business is changing and my competition is taking them. So all of that comes into place to determine, what do you do? How do you know if you're on the right path, if you need employees or you don't need employees? If there is, that is the reason why sometimes you hear about these big large corporations, that they do massive layoffs, and then when you less expect it, they go and lay off 100 and 200 employees at the same time. Because when they go into the trends and the ratios analysis, they realize that they're spending too much money in employees that they do not need, because they're losing clients, because they're not growing as fast, because the market has shrunk, because the competition has taken a big chunk of their business, or things like that. A scatter plot is more related to basically that know all the needs of the companies are located in just one place. Sometimes you see the needs spread it around, that they talk about, I have the need for one employee in this department. I have the need for two employees in two other departments. So sometimes the needs of the companies are more about, uh, they're based basically on the clients and how we're providing services. I'm not sure if you have ever seen what a scatter plot is, but it's kind of like, when you see a regular ratio table with a little dots everywhere that spread around. That's part of the trends and the analysis that the company is able to determine. The statistics department of the research department of the company is able to determine and say, hey, we have a need here, but we also have a need here, and we also have a need here, and we also have a need here. So then they as a director or president or vice president we have to think and go back and say, okay, wait a minute, do I have the money to cover all these different needs that are all scattered around within my company? Or I basically need to go in and classify them and determine what is best for the company, what is second, what is third, and then tackle the situation one by one. So that goes into the fourth point, that is the managerial judgment, that it helps you to determine that you have to make the hard decisions, because if you don't have the budget to cover everything at the same time, then you know that there are some things that have to be sacrificed for a little bit. That means maybe even one department stays with a smaller group of staff because you don't have the money right there and then to hire more people for that department. So all this forecasting helps you to determine also inside what you do with your employees and outside what service are you giving to your customers. So scatter plots are very important to do because they are directly connected to the customers. You always have to make sure that your customers are very well taken care of. So using, for example, of the call center, a lot of people maybe within the company don't think that the call center is important, but as a manager you know that it is. People call to the call center, clients come to complain, to request assistance, to request support. So the call center is very important to keep it with enough staff, because if not, people are going to start complaining. People are going to say, oh, is that I called your company for support, and basically I was for 30 minutes on the phone, and after 30 minutes I have to hang up the call because nobody went on the line and helped me with what I have. So this actually is very, very important for companies nowadays within technology, like computers, software, cable companies, internet companies, all of that. Because if you, for example, have issues with your internet and you're calling the company and you need the internet right away, and 30 minutes later you have not been able to get in touch with anybody to solve the issue of the internet, then basically you turn around and the next day you start looking for another company that provides better internet services. But it's not internet services. What you are actually after is better customer service, that when you need the need, they are able to cover the need. So those are the aspects of, as a manager, what we have to consider, the way that we don't lose clients. If we don't lose clients, we don't have to let go of employees. So the situation goes hand in hand. As part of forecasting for supplies, talking about this is more about internal replacement for employees. This goes into the action of how do we do the things that we do to get better employees. So basically, employees have demands that we have to forecast, and we have to make sure that we give them that services. So how many employees in one position do we need? So that is the main important thing that as a manager, we need to consider. So then we go and say, okay, so I have to forecast the supply, because if I need 10 employees in this department, I need to make sure that I give my employees all the resources. Here is unfortunately nowadays when companies are starting saving a lot of money. They're saving a lot of money because companies now are outsourcing services. So, for example, um, companies used to have their own payroll department. Now a lot of companies don't have the payroll department. They're outsourcing services from a payroll company, so they avoid the drama, they avoid the stress, they avoid the mistakes of tracking vacation hours, sick hours, tax deductions, and all those things that are part of payroll. So payroll is one thing that internally nowadays is kind of like disappearing in a lot of sectors, because now people are um, outsourcing those. The other ones, for example, is in the medical field. A lot of doctors' offices used to do everything in-house, have the people from the payroll, have the people for billing. Now they're networks of billing companies that provides support to a network of doctors at the same time. So they take care of all the billing or calling the clients. You owe us this much, you have to pay this much, give them information about insurance. So what does it mean for us? For us as a manager means how we can save money. Maybe outsourcing certain jobs help us save money. It will be cheaper to just pay to a company that have 10 employees, a director, a bigger building, for example, because you have to place all these people in one location to do the job. So, but as a manager at the same time, is that if we already have a payroll department in place, is having the decision of letting everybody go and firing everybody and close the department completely, because you're going now to outsource those needs. So personal replacement goes into that part as well, the part of the outsourcing, the part of considering something out there. Because as a managers, what do we do? Yes, we think with our hearts, we love our employees, we establish a relationship with them, especially if they're employees that have been at the company for a long time. But as a manager, unfortunately, we have to go into the other stage of what is the best for the company, how the company can save money. Is this the best approach or not? And unfortunately, sometimes making those decisions is harder, because at the end, the bottom line, sometimes it ends up being that we need to let go people, we need to close departments, we need to um, reduce employees or reduce hours, or even go back and review salaries. Companies that, for example, are used to give bonuses to the employees either every quarter or once a year or something like that, then they go into, we're not going to give bonuses anymore. Or, and so it affects all that. Forecasting is affected, all that planning is necessary, but at the same time it helps us to know what do we depend on it, what it is important for us to move the company forward. So now we go into what is called the predictions. How do we monitor all of this? How it's not that we have a crystal ball to know that as a manager, something in human resources is going to work. And it's not only in human resources, that any plan that we have, any projection that we have, any change that we have to do to the company or we want to do to the company, that is going to work. So it is very hard for us to know how we're going to see the company a year from now, if this is going to work, if this is going to be the best outcome. That if at the end of the year we're going to go and turn around and say it was a mistake to get rid of the payroll department, it was a mistake for us to lay off all these people, this company was a disaster. Why? Because you chose the wrong company, to outsource the wrong company for payroll, for example, and it had created internally, it had created more issues than solutions. So most employees will review all these plans or this outsourcing, and we go into the questions and ask, is it sufficient? Is it better for us to stay this way? Is it better to do additional changes? Do we need to change additional? Do we need to continue in the same path or modify? So all of those things help us to determine if we are on the right path, if that goal that we set up for a year, we have to change it. So here is from that part of aspect of prediction, we go into the succession planning, which is basically um, it's more like the logical aspect of the process based in what is workforce planning. It's more about laying out plain and simple the projected force. What are the gaps that we need to cover? What are the needs that we have? With one employee works, two employee works, three employee works. All of that is like the basic aspect of saying, how do we do this? How many people do we have? Do we have $20,000, $30,000, $500,000 to do this? And basically, do we need and say, okay, so if we have, like we were talking back into the scattered plot image, if we have 10 different things that we can cover and we only have money for five, then we go and say, okay, so where are we going to hire? How many people? Where are we going to put it? What gaps are we going to cover? But at the same time, then we go a step further and say, if we cover this gap, are we creating this other gap in this other area? Or this is going to grow. This situation, this need is going to get bigger because we don't have employees here. So all of that is basically what is called at the succession planning. Now you know what you need to do and how to do it. To what? To basically now deciding and going into the stage of recruitment. Does anybody has any question until now after everything that I had mentioned from planning? Anybody has anything to add, anything that had faced in the company, any situation that you want to share now, or do you want me to continue? Okay. So if no questions, so then continue with the process. So now we go into what it is the recruitment aspect, but not only the recruitment aspect, but the effectiveness of the recruitment. If we don't do this process well, we will be a complete failure and we will not cover the gaps that we will mention before because we will end up hiring the wrong person. So it is very important know what we call recruitment, but actually an effective recruitment. What do we need? Now, if we talk about efficiency, what we need to be careful is remember that all companies are different, all positions are different, and all need a difference. And this is talking about the example that I gave you earlier, that it is different needing an assistant director of the vice president than the president than a director of the department. So that is what it means by affecting recruiting, being aware of what level within in the organizational chart, what is it that we need. So that's why we go into the process of considering the recruiters. We go into, are we able to do this ourselves, or do we need to hire a recruitment agency that help us with the filtering of people, help us with the first process of interview, helping us with testing the skills of these employees. So for example, if you go really up higher in the organization, if you're looking for a president, if you're looking for a vice president, if you're looking for that level, there are a lot of companies that actually outsource recruitment agencies because of that, because these companies have the experience to filter the candidates, because now you're dealing with people that they're, for example, have experience of working with budgets of millions of dollars, have experience being the supervisors of thousands of employees. And maybe we are not at that skilled level of looking for somebody at that, that meet those requirements. So that is part of being aware that might be somebody out there that help us to find and attract the perfect candidate for the positions that we have open. So recruitment is basically the key, because when we review the job descriptions, when we review everything and we are aware of our needs, maybe somebody that applied for that position, when you read the information, you realize, oh, this person is excellent for this other position. So when you are calling for the interviews, you can call this person and say, hey, you applied for this position, assistant director of payroll, but you have so much experience in finance and you have an accountant that we are in the process of also looking for an assistant director of finance. Would you be interested in also applying for that interview, or will you consider an interview for that position? So we're basically taking advantage of that candidate, of the skill, to cover another need that we have. So that alone, in a way, save us money. We were going to create the job description. We were going to pay the recruitment company. We were going to go hold the whole process or marketing this position and bringing people, when we actually have within the pool one or two or three candidates that meet also the requirements for this other position. So you can actually mix and match and do that consideration of recruitment. So you're actually saving money in the process, saving time, and actually even hiring two people that you need instead of one, and starting the process all over again. So this is counting of the information of, this is an example of recruitment planning with what we as companies sometimes we face with the applications. And this is basically only as an example for positions that we can see that people apply and we as a managers we face. So this picture basically shows the offer of the amount of people that the position generates, the amount of people that are invited, the amount of people that are interviewed, the amount of people that you offer the job, and the amount of people that you actually hire. We're talking about, this is an example, of course, a position that 1,200 people apply. Let's say, for example, you're hiring 5 people at the same time. But this is just a graphic of showing you more or less how difficult it is, the process of recruitment and reviewing is. And that's the reason why a lot of people outsource the company. If you don't have the experience reviewing 1,200 applicants to determine which ones are better to go to the next level, it will take you a long time to do it. So depending on the position that you are considering, you will be able to determine if you can go and say, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to hire these people myself. I'm going to do the whole process myself. Or I'm going to go and basically just hiring somebody that can help with the process. This is done actually depending on the amount of budget that you have and the amount of employees that you're looking for. But these numbers that you can see right here on the screen is basically just for the information of an example. If you reduce the amount of applicants, if you hire somebody, if you open a position and 50 people apply, this is kind of like basically what they're telling you. From 50 people that apply, maybe 10 are worth inviting to review. The other one are people that are desperate for a job and they just sit and apply and apply and apply and apply, and maybe they don't even meet the requirements. So in order to do this as well, now we go a little bit into what it is employment law and requirements to make sure that where we are doing the process of hiring, we are doing it the right way. We are meeting the Department of Labor requirements, policies for posting, policies of discrimination, policies of age, policies of disability, all of that. We need to make sure that we are recruiting the right people, but that we also are offering the correct information. So it is important to make sure that everything we're doing is following the Department of Labor laws, wherever the country we are, whatever the requirements we are. Even if in our mind, for example, I don't know if you recall that a couple of weeks ago, I used like the sample of construction, that in your mind, you have this idea that only men do construction. But if a woman apply and you see that has been involved in the field or whatever, then you cannot discriminate that person. You cannot omit that person for an interview just because of that. So we have to be careful when we start the process as well, how we do the job description, how do we present it, how we meet the requirements of the way that even before somebody applies, that somebody can turn around and say, you are discriminating of this group of people, of this age of people, or something like that. So it's it's a very tricky process. A lot of people take it for granted, but if you know better and you have the budget, sometimes it's better to obtain the assistance of a recruitment agency because they're always aware of all of that. So now basically we're going into the discussion of internal sources. Now here we are ready to post the position, but we are with the dilemma as manager of saying, do we give the opportunity to internal employees to apply? Do we think that we have internal employees that will be able to do this position? Do we promote, or we go to an entire processing of application and interviewing and all of that? So internal sources, which is basically hiring from within, it does save to the company a lot of money. And a lot of times they don't even have to hire a recruitment agency because they do everything in house, especially if they're doing through the process of recommendation. Like a manager has an employee of the department and the manager say, hey, I recommend this employee for this position because of this, of this, of this, or whatever. Or even the same manager tells the employee, hey, I encourage you to apply. I encourage you to submit the application. I think you would be a very good candidate for this job. So basically it does save us time, but then we go into the aspect that is very important, that is called favoritism, that a manager is not pushing certain employee because they like the employee and they want to help them. Or now we go into family issues that sometimes we face. Oh no, it's my brother-in-law, or it's my cousin, or it's a friend of my dad's, or whatever it is. So then we go into thinking that we're recommending this person for this position because of family affairs or relations affair, or because I know this person for a long time, or we're actually recommending this person because he does have the skills that we need for this new position. So it is very important that whoever the director of human resources, or the person in charge of interviewing and considering internal candidates, had also that into place. No favoritism, no favors because it's my friend, because I know it, because of everything. No, because that actually makes us internally waste time. it affects actually the hiring on somebody from within that actually did have the skills, and then at the end we have to remove the person from the position, and then we go and post the position outside, so that internal employee that met the requirements for that position, that was a good candidate for that position, then just lost the opportunity of basically having that new job. So in order to recruit from within, for example, something that is important is the engagement of the employees. Do we provide the candidates with the right information? Are we able to handle the interview correctly? Are we able to show that we are not putting any favorites and we're just basically trying to select the same one? So I added this information here that talks about the engagement guide for managers. Even if you are not, and I have mentioned this before, the director of human resources, you are the supervisor of that department, you deal with employees, it is very, very important to be aware of what is called the engagement guides. The engagement guides are basically is the extensive research that a manager has to do to recommend an employee that actually really, really, really is the perfect candidate for the position and that is going to benefit the organization and the managers. We have to be careful with the person that we recommend because our reputation is also in the line. So even though it's our brother-in-law or it's a friend of my brother's or it is whatever person that we know, we have to be careful that our name is between all of this. So it is important to know that if we're doing something with the organization, that we know that it is for the best. So we go into what is called organizational drivers in order to do a proper engagement guide. What is the research that we do to determine if the employee will learn quickly, if the employee will be the best candidate, if the employee will be the best fit for that department, especially when we have employees that have been in the company for a long time and they might had faced issues like what we call they have a history of competition or animosity, or they have personal issues, they don't like each other or whatever it is. Even though we have the perfect employee for that position, the fact that we're going to put those two employees together in the same department, it will actually be detrimental for us. So even though that person has the skills, then basically what we need to do is to keep peace and harmony. And if you have a department of 5 employees, then everybody else is going to be stressed out. Everybody else is going to be unhappy. Everybody else is going to start thinking on leaving. So all of those things are important to identify. Do we want to bring this person into this department? Does the person has the skills that we need? Is the person meeting the requirements for that position? So here is when we go into thinking about, do we trust the selection? Do we as manager, do we trust their recommendation that this person, maybe one manager is sending you an email and say, hey, I recommend this person is great, this person is this person is that, this person is whatever. So we as a manager responsible for hiring that person or transferring that employee, we go into the point is, do we trust what this manager is telling us about this employee? Is it telling us the truth, or is just recommending a friend that we don't even know if it really works? So because we have to go into thinking about the success of the company, we don't want somebody that a week later or 2 weeks later we're getting rid of. No, we're looking for somebody that is a long-term employee that is going to solve the situations and the need cover the needs that we have in that department. So it is important to make sure that even though they are recommending us people from inside, that we take the time to review. So now we go into like the manager aspect of this process, which is what do we do on a daily basis? How do we work with this new employee? Is it going to be a positive relationship with the new group? Is going to be somebody that is going to bring good things to the team and excel the team and make the team better. So all of that, now we go here more into the psychological aspect, the behavior. What is the best benefit for the team? What is the best employee that we can incorporate in the team and the team will benefit from it? So all of those things are things that sometimes we don't consider and we just transfer people from one place to another one. And sometimes we make the biggest mistake by just transferring somebody from one place to the other one without considering all these aspects. What the other members of the team are going to think, if are they happy with the choice, are they happy with the selection, and all of those things are the ones that we need to consider to have harmony in the workplace. And harmony in the workplace, even though it sounds kind of cliche, is that if employees are not happy, employees will leave. And that's what you have to avoid. So if you have 5 members of a team and you brought somebody new, and that somebody new is affecting those 5, then basically for you fixing one situation, now you're facing 5 unhappy employees, maybe looking for a job to leave. So at the end, you find yourself not with one position open to fill, but with 3 or 4 or 5 positions to fill. And those are the things that we have to avoid. So it is important to know all the contributions, all the skills, everything that the employee is going to bring to us, to know if we are able to meet those requirements. If the employee is able to tell us, we can do this, we can do that, we can meet those needs, we can meet the requirement. So it is important to find the perfect fit, the perfect individual. So we go into one of the final aspects of what it is, the engagement guide. And like I say, this engagement guide is mostly for processing of hiring within, which is the internal recruitment. Is it actually reasonable for us to, and appropriate for us to hire somebody and promote from within? Depending on the position, sometimes we do what is called fresh blood. We need somebody from outside. We need somebody that actually work in the competition, for example, because we need to learn new things. We need to learn how to expand, how to grow from local to regional to international. And if we stay within the same employees, those employees don't have the skills. So those employees are not going to take the company to the next level. So that is part of basically, do we have the good relationship? Does this employee meets the necessities of the of the company? Do we have a freedom? A freedom means basically, are we required to hire somebody from within? Or basically it's better to not even considering employees from within, open the position for everybody to apply, and internally the employee that wants to apply. So basically stop the processing of first stage within, second stage outside, and just go straight to outside, but announce the position inside just in case one of your employees from within the company might want to apply. So if we go with that option of basically no hiring from within and just a straightforward post the position and let everybody applies and let the best applicant wins, then we go into those outsources of candidates. What do we need? What is important for us to consider? So now we go into the part of the outside. Employees can always get all the employees when we need it. Why? Because we can go, like I was telling you, we can go to recruitment agencies, people can just apply, we can just post the position online in so many different websites that they're at. But is that basically the best approach for us? It is what we need. So we need to start by thinking if that is the best approach for us to get the best candidate. So do we go into the recruitment aspect and hiring the recruitment agency and say, don't post our position, just look within the people that you have and recommend us to us, somebody to us, because we have the need to hire somebody quickly, and publishing the job is going to take longer with the process. So those are the things that a manager, we have 100% the right to decide how we're going to bring that new candidate into place. Do we hire somebody? Do we accept recommendation? Do we post the job? We don't post the job. So that is when we go into making all these decisions. Do we post an ad? Do we post national, international? Do we participate in job fairs? What are the benefits of applying in job fairs? What is the benefits of the different websites? Um, as you know, for example, they have Monster Inc., they have Career Builder, they have Indeed. So you go and say, okay, all these companies charge a lot of money. Which one is the best? So as managers, we have to even review that to make sure that we select the right candidate, that right company, that the company is going to help us to bring the best candidates. So now we go into the process of maybe considering outsourcing or purchasing or renting or become a members of a cloud services for a while, because there are a lot of softwares that help us to do this, especially if it is a position that you know that a lot of people are going to apply. The lower the position, the more people apply, because nowadays, regardless of education, regardless of degree, we still have that gap. We still have a lot of people that did not go to school after high school, or we have those people that just went to college but never got an advanced degree. And even less, the pool of people that has a doctoral degree is actually very, very small. So the lower the position it is, we know that more people are going to apply. So within that level, we have to think how we are going to filter all of that. So it is important for us to know that there's softwares out there, that there are applications out there that we can use to reduce the effort of hiring people. Um, Nowadays, for example, something that not a lot of people use is newspapers anymore and magazines. I don't know if you noticed that long time ago, when you were looking for a job, the first thing you needed to do was to buy the Sunday newspaper, because they have pages and pages of list of different jobs. Nowadays it's not like that. Nowadays you just go online and you just look for whatever and offer whatever. So um, basically it helps us to determine what is the best approach for us. Where do we go there? Do we share the information or not? For example, I'm going to use an example. I work full time in a university, which is We get sometimes emails from jobs positions of other universities because the university is always thinking on promoting, but sometimes it's not promoting from within, or sometimes they're just positions part-time, and the university encourage employees to work part-time somewhere else. Like, for example, I teach full-time in one university and teaching part-time at another university. Why? Because you learn and you meet some other people, you work with some other professionals, you work with some other group of students, and that is an enrichment for you, an enrichment for your organization. Out of all these new people that you meet, then you say, oh, let's do a project together, let's write an article together, let's do a research together. So all of that is beneficial. A lot of companies do that. So then we go into the advertising and the promotion aspect of it. How do we do it? What source are we going to use? What it is important for us? And actually, depending on the budget, then we go and say, okay, so if we are going to hire, which one is the best agency? A public agency, a non-profit, a private? What type of position do you have? There are specific employment agencies, like, for example, like using the example, you need a new president, you need a new director, you need a new assistant director. They're actually organizations that specialize only on that level of candidates. So instead of you going out there and waiting for how many people and filter how many people, then basically you decide, you know what, I'm going to go through here. They're going to give me a specific candidates that have certain amount of years of experience, certain jobs, certain skills, certain degrees, whatever it is that we're looking for. So if they are different companies out there, then we have to be diligent. We have to do the work, and we have to see, what are we going to do? Are we going to do the recruitment process outsourcing, or we're going to do for demand recruitment? These two are basically a little bit different. The recruitment process and outsourcing is basically when you hire a company that helps you to clean the applicants. 100 applicants submitted applications, not everybody's good. So recruitment process outsourcing is all of that. How do we do it? How do we clean up? Do we pay for on-demand recruitment services? On-demand recruitment services is telling the people, just send us candidates that have doctoral degrees and 10 years of experience. So depending on what we need, depending on what our needs are, depending on what we need to cover, we go into the aspect of human resources. The advantage of this, what I was mentioning a few minutes ago, is about the labor laws, that we have to be careful. We can be picky, and we say, we want this description, we got this person, we want this years of experience, we want this, we want that, we want whatever, and we can want a person with 10,000 different things. But then we go into the legal aspect and say, are we meeting the Department of Labor law requirements? Are we discriminating certain group? Are we doing this the right way? So that's where this employees agency help us, and go into another aspect of employment that is important for us to consider, that it is temporary workers or alternative staffing. If we don't have a lot of budget, if it is a temporary job, if it is a temporary project, then maybe we don't want to go as far as offering health insurance or vacation day or sick days or whatever other benefits we offer our employees. So then now is when we go into, do we consider an alternative of employee, which is what we see here: temporary agencies, temporary employees, which agency we are going to do a contract with, how often the agency is going to send us employees, and all of that, because that helps us to determine maybe a part-time employee will cover our needs. So that will save us a lot of money internally, but it is important for us to know. So here it is again, when we go into the employment laws that I was mentioning just few seconds ago, is the liability and the treatment of the temporary work. If we do not have experience dealing with temporary employees, then basically we need to learn those skills, we need to learn those options, we need to know how to do this. How do I hire somebody, how do I deal with a temporary employee, what are the rights, what are the responsibilities, do I have the right to call the attention to this employee, or I report something to the agency and the agency deals with the employee. And this is something, if we have never done before, temporary employees and employees under supervised by agencies are handled and administrated and supported in a way sometimes even completely different. So it is very important for us to be aware of what we want, that we don't get involved with something that we do not have the experience. So this is something that is used in the in human resources, that is called, we call it poaching. And I wanted to share this with you guys, because sometimes maybe we are those that right now are looking for jobs and they are applying, and basically we say, oh perfect, I'm going to look for another job, I'm going to do this. But what we don't know is the backbone, what companies are facing right now, the mistakes. So for example, they have here an agreement with Uber and Google. Uber basically did a contract. They did a contract and they say, we're not going to advertise your positions with anybody else. You guys are going to help us. Uh, and you guys are going to do this, and you guys are going to do that, and you guys are going to do whatever. But at the same time, all this online hiring can create issues. Like, I don't know if you have seen people facing dangerous situation with Uber drivers, and then they file a lawsuit, and then you go into who is responsible. Is Uber responsible, or is Google responsible, because Google was doing the filter of the employee? So that's when the companies start blaming each other because they don't want to pay the lawsuit. So who is responsible of what? So sometimes doing all those hiring online, it basically, it's important for us to know that we are relying in good companies. That's why recruitment agencies are so important, even though they do charge a little bit, is because we avoid all those situations. We avoid lawsuits, we avoid dramas, we avoid dangerous situations that in the long run is going to bring um, more expenses for us, because then we're facing a lawsuit, then we're facing drama, then we're facing discriminations complaints and all of that. This aspect of recruitment is basically regarding the offshoring and outsourcing jobs. That is basically if we determine that we can hire somebody from other places. I don't know if you remember when I was talking in some classes before, that I was mentioning to you that it sounds bad to say, but COVID has forced a lot of companies to transfer positions online. So now supervisors will go and say, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to hire anybody local. If I put this position online, then basically I can broaden my opportunities and have applicants for all over the world doing it. So then now we have to be aware of what that entails. Do we have the budget to do that? what are the salaries in that country? Do we have the budget to match that salary? Do we tell that person that because the company is in the United States and according to labor laws in the United States, the salary is $20 an hour, we cannot pay more. So those are the things of outsourcing that we have to be careful, or that we are responsible and we're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna hire somebody from England, then I'm gonna see what is the cost of living in England, how does it work, what do they pay in England, what are the labor laws in England, that I can offer a job to somebody that because he lives in London is gonna have enough money to live. So outsourcing out there from around the world is great. And basically people that live in countries that their salary are low, then they do benefit with that job. But then what about if it is the opposite? If we're hiring somebody that is in a higher position and the cost of living is very expensive, it's very different living in a South American country than living in a European country or living in a country in Asia or the Middle East. Everything is different. Prices are different, food, rent, everything. So that's what we have to consider as well as hiring. So when we put that in the job description, again, going into the labor law, we have to be very aware of what we do there and how we label things. That no people thinking that because they live in Holland, we're going to give them a job with a salary that covers the cost of living in Holland. But if we cannot afford that, it is important for us to tell that ahead of time. You don't waste the time and the applicant doesn't waste this time. So how do we do that? Putting everything in the job description. I don't know how many of you are presently looking for a job, or maybe have bothered going to like websites like Indeed or whatever to see the job description. Now is, if you notice now, that's why sometimes the job descriptions are 3 and 4 and 5 pages when you need just a small little tiny piece, or not. What do you need? What level of education? How many years of experience? No, they're giving you 4 pages, and that's what it is, because the company is trying to cover them. You are not even applying yet, and the company is trying to protect themselves legally. I want to make sure that I tell you this up front, that you don't tell me that when I tell you that you work on Saturdays, you go and you turn around and say, oh, you never hired me to work on Saturdays. So all those little details are important. Everything that you think, everything that you can protect since the beginning, you do it. So in that way, you go actually into what it is, the recruitment aspect of it, and you go and say, what are the candidates? So you go back into analyzing and say, do I go national, do I go international? There are companies that they are still actually recruiting. They are recruiting online, but they are recruiting within the state. Like for example, if your company is in England, in London, you can say it's a remote, but then you can say remote in England only. So you are basically saying, I don't care where you live within England, but I'm only going to hire people in England. So if I live in the United States, or I live in Italy, or I live in Spain, even though the position is great, then basically what they're telling me is, you can move to England and live wherever you want in England, but you need to have an England home address and be here in the country to be able to work from home and do this job from home. So sometimes if we want to go that route, and want to recruit that way, all of that is what is important to put in the job description. So we are aware that since the beginning, we don't face ourselves with a dilemma, that we like a candidate, that we go all the way to the end, that we didn't discuss a bunch of things within the interview process, because you assume, as a manager, you assume some things, and the applicant as an applicant assume one thing, and then at the end when you go through all the interview process, and then basically is when the candidate find out that, oh my God, I live in Canada, and now you're telling me that basically for me to get the job I need to New York, and oh, by the way, I don't even have United States papers to go and to move into the United States and be able to work in the United States. So that's what it means about that aspect of recruitment. What tools do we need to recruit? What do we need to report ahead of time? That's fine. It might be tedious to provide a job description of 5, 6 pages, but since the beginning, you are protecting yourself. And actually, I don't know if you notice, what it is important for the company sometimes to they put it way on the top, or they label it with a square, or they put it with another color or something like that. So they make sure that since the beginning, the applicants know what they are going to face. What is the paper that they're going to hire or not? Do you have any questions whatsoever and to this point for what we have discussed? Do you want to talk about anything, provide some examples, or do you want me to continue? Do you guys want to take a little break, or do you want me to just continue straightforward with the presentation and the information that we're trying to cover?
As you want.
But I'm fine. I'm very flexible. Whatever you guys think that is appropriate for you, we can take a little break. You can share,
Can
you can
continue.
share example, whatever you want to do is fine.
You can I'm continue. ready to continue.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that everybody, is okay with the situation. I want to make it comfortable and appropriate for everybody. So now in the part of human resources and hiring and recruitment, we're going into a very difficult situation that a lot of companies always face, and is the pool of applicants. Even though we have a position, I don't know, like I say, using as an example, if you are applying for jobs nowadays and you notice in the applications that maybe they ask you for your race, they ask you if you're military or no, they ask you if you're disabled or no, they ask you if you need some type of assistance for the interview process. When they ask for those type of assistance, what it mean, if you're like blind or you're deaf or you need sign language interpreted, all of that as things that, believe it or not, sometimes we don't consider, and it is important for us to be aware of it, because nowadays we have more and more universities and more academic programs and more degrees that anybody, regardless of the disability, can actually do. For example, here in Florida, where I live, one of the number one colleges for blinds and deaf are here, and they have undergraduate, they have masters, and they have doctoral degrees, and they have entire programs that all the books are in Braille, and they have entire programs that the university provide sign language interpreters. So yes, excellent. The universities are basically consider this, they're considering this group of the population, of the community, which is great because everybody deserves an education and everybody can advance in the future. But putting that aside, then as an employee, we go in, and then let's say I posted this position. So what about if one of the applicants that apply reports that they're deaf, or report that they're blind, or even the simple examples that you see here, single, parents marry, depending on the country that we are, they ask for some things. For example, I'm originally from Colombia. I don't know if I have mentioned that before. In Colombia, the employment applications, for what my friends tell me, which is outrageous to me, they can ask you if you're married, they ask you if you have kids, they can ask you how old your kids are, they ask you, they require a visitation to your house. So then you go into all these aspects and you say, wait a minute, so if I tell you that I'm married and I have a 5-year-old, you might not hire me, because if my 5-year-old is sick and I need to take an after year off, then basically you're not gonna see that as an appropriate approach of employment. So all of this, as managers, as owners of the company, as director of a position, a lot of people take this more than any other aspect in a position for granted. And we have to be ahead of time prepared for anything. The fact that, for example, somebody applies for the job and somebody is in a wheelchair, but in the job description, that person is the best candidate for you and you see that has the skills, then basically you have to go into, I will hire this person and I will give them a flexibility to work from home? Or do I have to invest, for example, $10,000 in upgrading my office? Make sure that the hallways have a space for a wheelchair. Make sure that I have a bathroom, that the door is wider for the wheelchair to go in. Make sure that inside the bathroom, I'm providing the ADA requirements for the person to use the bathroom. So all these things. What about if we work in a country that they don't use a lot of elevators, that a lot of the buildings are two, three storage, and and as a second nature, you go and you go up and down, and that's it. Like we face, for example, that a lot of the old buildings in New York City, um, they were buildings we didn't have ADA laws before. So they just made the building with stairs and everybody goes up and down. But now we have ADA compliance. Now you have to make sure that the buildings have an elevator, that the buildings have ramps, that the buildings have all these type of services that we didn't have before. So then you go into the expenses that you have to endure by hiring this person. So it is very important. Again, this is the reason why we put that information in the job description. The more we go into details, the more you realize. So you're not basically, for example, telling the person, women cannot apply. No. But if you have noticed their position that say daily walking, daily standing up, required to lift up to 45 pounds. I don't know if you have noticed those little tiny things in the job description, but that is what basically they're doing. Why? Because, for example, it would be for most of the women, let's say it that way, to work in a job that every day they have to be lifting boxes of 50 and 60 or 70 pounds. So that's how you filter candidates in appropriate way without affecting any of the diversity laws or discrimination laws. But those are things that a lot of companies make a lot of mistakes, and we do have to be prepared uh, to offer what the employee needs if we are willing to hire them. So if we're willing to hire somebody that is blind, then we need to make sure that we're willing to buy the audio software that we need for the employee to do the job. And then we have to think, okay, so we're going to buy headsets for this person to do the job, because this person is going to be always listening to what the software is doing for them to know. So if the person is going to have headsets to listen to do the jobs, that means that the person is not going to be able maybe to hear the phone. So then you have to transform that position and say, okay, so I'm going to hire this blind person. I'm going to buy the software to put the computer ADA compliant. I'm going to buy the headsets. So that means that I have to tell the call center not to route a lot of calls to this employee, because the employee is going to have headsets, is not going to hear the phone, or is not going to be able to provide services. Or those employees, you go, okay, so if I give them the entire equipment, that means that I have to have this person not in an open area, but officially in an office that has a door and everything. So when they have the clients on the speakerphone, or they have the audio without headsets that they can hear the phone, then that doesn't interrupt anybody else. So those are things that are important for us to consider when we're doing all this application process and the job description process and everything. So even before we go into all of that is when we talk about, it is important to know the law. And it is what a lot of organizations ignore. And they get faced with different situations, very difficult situations, when they are interviewing people, because they do things their own way. They didn't put the job description the right way. They didn't include the right, the right information in the job description. And now they have this big pool of applicants that they cannot cover all the services. So sometimes the easiest way for company to just basically start from a clean slate is that close the position, and they basically call everybody and say, oh, I'm sorry, something happened with the budget, or a really lame excuse. Or we have to reallocate the budget. We made a mistake. We're not going to hire anybody at this time, or whatever it is. So now you have to go and create this lie to contact all these applicants to tell them, hey, we're not going to hire, because now we realize that since the beginning, we were doing the process all wrong. So it is important to know the law, the way that we arrange everything the right way. We give the right services, we provide the right description, what it is important for us to ask, what it is not important for us. It is one thing that in an interview, for example, if you're interviewing anybody, and then the person, as an example, say, oh, my son, blah, 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 blah. So right there, you know that at least the person has a son. You cannot assume that the person is married, or the person is still married, or the person is divorced, or whatever. Nothing. But at least now with that interview, you're saying, no, at least the person is talking that the person has a son. That's it. But we cannot assume anything else, because we don't know any of that. All those personal aspects we might know later on, when the employee is hired, when the employee is part of the team, and the employees start sharing picture. It's funny, like, for example, but that's just me for the aspect of what I know, human resources. I don't keep decoration in my office. I don't keep awards in my office, and I don't keep any family pictures in my office, because the way that I think is that my family is my family and my place of work is something else. I do have copies of my diplomas in my office, uh, posted there. But and sometimes you go into these employees offices, and they has all these little decorations and all these little things, and picture of all the families, and picture of all the kids, and picture of all the adults. That's fine. That's fine. It doesn't mean that not to have a not anything. But if you want to do that limitation, if you want to keep a private life, if you want to keep your life on your own, a lot of people do that, and they say, oh no, I'm keeping my office clean, my office, and some people know, some people like to have the picture of the kids, and some people like to have the opportunity every time they can to talk about what their son they did and how great my son is and everything. So that is part of basically internal policies that we even go as far and considering. Do we allow the employees to do that? How much do we allow the employees to have in their office? What it is appropriate, what is not. Why? Because sometimes there are things that the employee has that might offend somebody. And I'm going to use a perfect example. Let's say you have an employee, a gay employee in your company. Is one thing that is a gay employee and it follows the same regulations and everything, but it has inappropriate decorations in the office or inappropriate pictures or something like that, that you think that might get offended to somebody else. This goes also as far as actually religion. Religion is a big, big, big issue in the workplace, because you have to keep it in a way. You have people of different religions, you have people of different cultures, so you have to respect everybody else. And you say, okay, how much of religious image, for example, or religion information is appropriate to allow an employee to have in the office, that it doesn't go into the level of offending somebody else, or that somebody else thinking that is lack of respect. So the process of basically even going through all of that after hiring and everything is after the fact. How this person is going to behave, how this person is going to be part of the company, and be able to connect with the company culture. That's basically what it is important for us to consider. And then here we go into the last process of basically the application process. This is the last stage of what it is considered important for us to consider. That is basically the application forms, which is very, very, very important as well. Is creating an application that is appropriate for everybody, regardless of race, regardless of culture, regardless of everything. That asks important questions about what the employee is, what they coming from, for us to be able to get proper data about the position. Are you the good candidate for the position? But make sure that we don't have in the application those bias questions that might affect the pool of applicants. That even people, when they see the application, people say, hey, why is this people asking me this on the application? Or what do they want to know about this? So that those are important, that we have to be careful that don't go overboard and ask what we're not supposed to. The key of an employment application is just upfront learn about, obtain the correct data for us to, since the beginning, to know that it's a right candidate, that it will perform well, that it meets the position, the requirements of the position, to just basically even doing the first interview, for example. So that's what we have to be careful with the application. The right questions in the employment application are important, because if no, we will not get the right data to know which is the perfect employee for us. This basically concludes the part of everything that is a summary of chapter 5. Before we start the information of chapter 6, does any of you have any questions? Do you want to share any information with the group? Do you want to uh, add something to the information that I have covered this far? Anything that you want to share, anything that you think is important and relevant for the group to know? Does any of you would like to take a little break, or do we continue with the review of chapter 6?
Let's continue.
Let's have a break.
Do you want the break or you do not want the break? Or continue? I know I asked these questions because I know we are in different time zones, and I know that for many of you it's a little bit starting to be late in the evening. So just make sure that you don't get tired with this process or anything like that. So if you want me to continue, I'll continue. I just make sure that everybody it's okay with what we're doing. So in chapter 6, like we're talking about employment testing and selection. So now we're going into that final aspect of the recruitment aspect that we say, okay, so now I have these 5 people, and any of these 5 people will be perfect for the position. So then how do we move from here? How do we move forward to make sure that out of those 5 or those 6 or those 7 or whatever, we go into the best person? So it is important to consider, to ask us why it is important to test the employee. What is the benefit of testing and selecting an employee that will be with us for a long time? So it is important to internally for us, then going as a group, as an interview committee, and maybe creating a description. Okay, so you created the job description, you know what you need, but through the interview, you know about all these benefits of all these new skills that you were not considering. Let's say, for example, you had a position that you say, I need somebody with a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience. So now you ended up with a pool of candidates that actually you have candidates that have master's degree and doctoral degree. And that in general, they have 5 years, 6 years, 10 years or more. So during the interview process, you have learned that these people know about all these other things that you did not even consider before, or that you believe that they were not important to you, but that now that you're doing through the interview process, you know that they're actually important and relevant. So sometimes before they started doing a process of elimination, and the interview committee members, they can create like a table, a little list, a yes and no, for example. What does this person has? What additional skills this person has that we were not thinking about it, but that now after the interview process, we realize that they're important and that we need them. So you create all those additional lists of all those additional skills that the person has. And these are basic questions, even for example, language. Like I remember at the beginning of the class when I told you guys, like we are from different countries. We speak different language. For many of us, maybe English is as our second language. We open a position and we hiring people, let's say for example in English, but let's assume that 3 and 5 people say, oh, I speak English and Spanish, English and French, English and Portuguese, English and whatever, any other language, Italian or whatever. So we say, wait a minute, we were not considering having that. But if we're going to expand and we're going to go national, or we're going to open this other branch in this area, that means that we need somebody with this extra skills. So this is perfect. We are basically looking into the future and looking for somebody. So before selecting the last candidate, that
So, Brick.
Bye guys. I think the teachers kept from the class. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
How's your day and night?
Let's wait.
I apologize. It's kind of raining here where I am, and I lost internet for a while. It's everybody
Oh,
hearing me? I think the recording didn't stop for what it looks like. So let me go in really quick and
yes.
let me put you back in the presentation again. I apologize for that. Sometimes the internet give us surprises. Okay, so let me go back really quick to where we were on chapter 6. The good thing is that I'm running. We were here. We were talking about how do we determine if we are hiring the right candidate depending on the list that we can create of those additional skills that they have. So here we basically go into the purpose of the first objective, which is what it is important for us. So we go into creating the list, and we're going to go into testing. Remember, everything in writing looks perfect, everything in the interview looks perfect, everything in paper looks perfect, but it doesn't mean that it's true. That's actually even the reason why we go into requesting references, to calling the different people to determine if it is true or not. We we go into we go into the determination if we need more people, if we need additional resources, if we need to train them, if we need to ask them something. So it is important to know what we need to determine the the skills, to confirm the skills of the person. And that's where we go into how much this is going to cost us. Do we do a test online? Do we invite the candidates to do a test in the company? What are the implications? Are the persons willing to do that? But even though it might take us a little bit longer, it's beneficial because then we go into the point of reliability and validity. We are confirming that the person is who the person say it is. That if the person say, I know Microsoft Word, that we know that is true. I know Excel, that we know is true. Because what we don't want to do is to hire again the wrong person. So we go into the aspect first of reliability. So we use some tools. We can use some tools in the company that help us to obtain some type of a scoring. There is a lot of softwares right now that we can use to identify the skills of the candidate. They can be online, they're designed by specific companies. There is a way that is they track if they cheating. There is a way that they can track if the person tried to stop the test, all of that. A lot of companies are using what is called analogy tests. Analogy tests are tricky because there is sometimes no like right or correct answer. They're just trying to figure out the way of thinking of the person. So those are things that are important for us, because sometimes you have to outsource and pay for it. Sometimes a lot of companies, they just do it when they have the first 5 candidates. So a lot of companies do it at the beginning, even before applying. When you're applying for a position, sometimes they take you to this website where you do a test that helps them. The score of the test as well help them to determine if they call you for an interview or not. But if you do it some other way and you're almost at the end with a pool of applicants or 4 or 5 applicants, then you go into the, okay, how am I gonna filter? Am I gonna believe everything they're saying? They project they project themselves well. They sell themselves well. But how do we know if what they're selling is what we're after? So those are things that are important to know for testing. To know, this is an example. I'm glad I had this in when I was talking to you about it in chapter 5 about the scattered plots. This is basically what it is, just in case you guys didn't have that idea of what a scattered plot is all along. When I explain it to you, this is a perfect example. This is basically matrix that shows the needs, where the needs are located, how close are to the scores. In using it as an example in chapter 4, and I'm sorry, in chapter 5, is like if we assume that all of this square is our company, and if we divide our company in little tiny tiles, if we divide this square in little tiny tiles, and you can divide it according to the department. You have 7 departments, 8 departments, 9 departments. So you can even divide this, and then the results are actually those dots fall within those squares, within those tiles, and then you're able to see where the needs are, which department needs more or less, or in between, which department is really short of a staff. So here in this example as well, that you can continue using this process in the interview process, is that you can use an scatter plot to determine how the skills of the persons are. If this red bar is your main goal, is this red bar is what you're looking, everybody that stays in this percentile is what you think is best, then this help you to determine the deficiencies. Each of these points symbolizes, for example, an answer of a question that you have. So if you have 20 different points, is because your questions or your tests have 20 different answers. So all of these answers, you overlap for each of the candidates, and you see which of the candidates is closer to your goals, which of the candidate is closer to what you have in mind. So that's an easy way of testing and determine the skills of the person in comparison with what you really want. Then the other part of the validity is basically just like reliability, test measurements, something, making sure that what you're saying is true, that what you're saying does fit my company. That if you have a deficiency in Microsoft Word, but you're very, very strong in Excel, then you say, okay, I do need somebody with both. That's fine. This person meets my requirements, even though doesn't not allow Microsoft Word, but I can train that person. I can give them this manual, or I can pay for this training to improve those skills. So ahead of time, as a manager, it's important for us not to eliminate certain skills just because the person doesn't know them. If the person have the skills, then we know that the person has the ability to learn something new. So we cannot eliminate employees just because they lack of this or just because they lack of that. We basically look at the person and say, who is the best candidate for training? Who is the person that we think that it will learn faster about the company environment, that will be able to feel comfortable in the position and do what we need to do? Why? Because regardless of how many degrees the person has, how many years of the person has, how many diplomas the person has, the person doesn't know you, doesn't know the employees, doesn't know the company, doesn't know the environment of the company and the goals that the company has. So regardless of the person is coming from and regardless of the skills, you still will have to train that person, because you're training that person to know you, to get to know you, your company, your other employees. So we can never eliminate anybody because it's not there, because the person is never going to be there unless you are interviewing somebody that worked in the company before that the person left. The person left to another job 4, 5, 6 years late, and 6 years later the person is applying for something else. So you have an idea that the person knows what the company is all about. However, remember that companies change and company transform, and our idea is that the company do something new and grow. So what this applicant think that how the company was 5 years ago when this person was working with us, the company is completely different. And the fact that actually, like, the people that he or she knew, they're not even there anymore. They've gone, they left, they retired, they moved somewhere else, they were fired, who knows what. So sometimes the people apply to the same companies back again because they're thinking that it's comfortable, that they already know the company, but that's not the case because the company has process and has changed. So all of those things is important for us to know and important for us to determine, to analyze, and at the end selecting that candidate that we want. So as part of validity testing, it's important things that we need to know. We need to analyze the job. Uh, that means the duties, what that the person needs, especially for us to know the proper test that we are going to connect to that job for the persons to do. We need to make sure that we know who is going to administrate the job. I don't know if you work companies there, sometimes they do massive testing and they call all the candidates, and the candidates go in and go into a room and they do the testing and you get the testing. So you're actually creating a psychological pressure because you're forcing all the candidates to meet. Everybody's gonna see each other. Interviews are very individual and nobody sees each other and nobody knows who applied or anything like that. But a lot of companies do that on purpose. They bring everybody together for a main interview, for a main test, because of the same thing. The way that the candidates see each other, and you can read from that behavior and everything. So sometimes you do the cross validation, which is determine if the employee did well in one things and then the employee didn't do well in another ones, but then how you balance those scores and those results the way that you are ended up with the same, with the best candidate. So this chart, for example, that I'm showing you here is a chart of what they call an expectancy chart, and it's basically the results of all the testing. So it gives you numbers that you say, I was expecting that this candidate was good in this, based on the interview, based on the resume, based on the the diplomas that they have. So that helps you also at the same time to determine if you were on the right track, if you know, if you had that gut feeling that that candidate was, or maybe when you get the results are so completely opposite to what you have in mind, that then you realize and you say, oh my God, this person looked perfect on paper. That means he had an excellent resume. This person did great in interview because of the personality that the person has. Is approachable, it reads the room well, handle the interview well and everything. But then the outcome, that is the nitty gritty of what you need, then basically everything is bad scores, everything is bad results. So then you go and say, wait a minute, this person lied in the resume, and this person is very charming and outspoken and is looks perfect and is just what we're looking for the looks, but actually at the end ended up happening that is no. So we're getting all these biases, all these results within what we read, to what we learn on the interview, to the results. So that's when testing is very, very important, because anybody can hire a company to create an outstanding resume, and everybody can get a coach, a human resources coach of training for interview and preparations, or but then at the end, what? At the end, you ended up hiring somebody that it basically went through the entire interview process lying, lying basically to your face, lying on the paper, lying on the interview, selling themselves. I know this, I know that, I know whatever, and creating things that then at the end you're saying, wait a minute, 50% of what you told me is not true, because if you really have done this and you really had experience about this, then your scores will have been this. So the scores don't project really what the person is. So that help us to filter and actually to analyze that situation and say, so even though in the long run, we're probably investing a little bit more in this testing, a lot of these companies charge a little bit more either to buy the test paper, just to offer it over there at your company, or to pay for access to a company to allow to do the test and gather the results and collect the data and provide a report. But actually in the long run is better, because you are investing money that you know that at the end you are hiring the best employee for the company. This is crucial, like I was saying to you, depending on the level. You want to invest more upfront in positions that are crucial to you: the director of finance, the director of payroll, the director of human resources, the vice president of operations. The higher you go, the more responsibility the person has, the more details that you need to make sure that you are actually hiring the right person. So it is important to know all of this, and basically helps you. But now we're going again, which is something that we mentioned way before, is the testing, the security, the requirements, the privacy laws, the what testing is correct, that the tests that we're asking are no biases, that the test is not asking for things that we're not supposed to ask. So that's what we have to be careful. So we go into diversity, what is called as diversity counts, that we need to make sure that the results are reviewed regardless of um, regardless of whoever is doing it. So I'm going to tell you an example for you to understand what I'm talking about here. Normally in studies, normally in many studies and many research, they have always say that men are better for math, for example, than women. That men are better for abstract analytical things than women. But that is just the research and that is just the stereotype. As you know, we have excellent women that are researchers and engineers and mathematicians and everything. But we're not going at that level of professional. We're just going basically to a standard test for the interview. So let's assume the base that yes, we know the men are better for math or think faster with numbers than women, for example. So if we have a woman that is a candidate, and in the questions that we're asking, there are a couple of questions that are math, and when we get the result, we are able to actually to confirm that we say, oh, you know, all the guys did better in this finance questions, of this number questions, of this percentage questions than the women. But then that's where we have to be careful and we say, do we eliminate this person because it didn't provide good answers in math? So then we go far and say, okay, do we need that level of analogy in the position? Do we need the math skills? Yes, it's different that somebody's applying for a finance position. Another one just for us to kind of like test the IQ of the person, the analytical aspect of the person. So we have to be careful that we don't eliminate, for example, and those things, because like I say, if it is not a priority for us and we don't need it, we have to make sure that we don't on the test. Now talking about the basic categories of selections is determined about the type of tests that we can do for according to the position. So we need to make sure that the test that we are providing to the employees is a test that matches that we need. We cannot be biases, we cannot discriminate, and we cannot put the applicants in a position that the applicants are all going to fail. So we are going to receive test scores or data of test scores that are not helpful to us. So for example, if we are asking, if we're asking for a director of operations or directors of operation and directors of sales, we know that the test, regardless of the sales or whatever, the test of the director of sales might have more numbers. It's like the same thing that director of payroll and director of finance. It might have even regular problem questions, math questions that we see in a math class, because these people are going to be dealing with numbers, dealing with money, dealing with things. So we need to know if they have good math skills. The position of the somebody of director of operations, we're talking that is somebody that it has to deal more with like human behavior, the human aspect. Do you have experience managing people? Do you have what it takes to de-escalate situation, employing situations and things like that? So the test will be completely different. So we need to make sure that the test measures what we need, because if not, the results that we are going to get, they're not going to be helpful for us to know if we are hiring the right candidate or not. So sometimes there are companies that use, I wanted to leave this here. I actually had a little bit of questions about these simulations. This has been very traditional in human resources. And in a lot of the research questions they ask you, like, give me an example of how you had treated a customer, an upset customer, or what procedures have you followed, or things like that. Sometimes the answers might not apply because depending on where the employee works or the employee does not have the skills. Like, for example, if I'm a regular employee here and I have been in this company for 5 years and I want to apply for a director's position, The director is the one that handles the employees that are upset. So if I have this level, the regular answer for me will be, I have never experienced that because on my employee level, I don't do it. I refer that situation to my supervisor. But that in a way is telling me I clean my hands. No, if I pick up the phone and the employee is upset, even though I'm done handle directly employees that are upset, I'm the first of the company at that end. I was the person that answered the phone. So I need to have the experience at least to calm the person a little bit down when I transfer the call to the director. And that I'm able to have the skills to listen between the screams and the upsetting and everything that the person is saying to actually filter the information correctly. So when I transfer the call to the director, I'm not just transferring the call, no. I wait for the director to be on the phone and tell the director, this person is upset, this person is saying this, and here it is the call. So even though I do not have the experience directly because I'm not a director, I was at that point the face of the company, and I need to have the skill to handle those type of calls. So the sample and the simulations positions do help us a lot to know the creativity of the person. You don't have the skills, it is not your job responsibility. And that's another thing that we're dealing with employees that say, oh no, that's not part of my job description, so, or you're calling the wrong department, let me transfer you. No, because the people skills that we need have to be there regardless of whatever. Oh, you took the wrong call because it's a call from the budget department. At least be nice about it and say, hey, you called the wrong department, what can I do for you? Listen to the person a little bit, because in the budget department might have 10 different employees. So if you take the time to listen to the person, you will know a little bit more about what the person is all about, what the person is calling about, why the person is so upset. And then when you transfer the call, out of all those 10 people that work in the budget department, you know who to transfer the call to. So all those simulations, it doesn't matter that officially you say that you don't have the skills, you need to be aware. You're part of the company, you're working in the company. So all of those things help us. So information about basic procedures, what do you do, how do you decide what it was appropriate or not, why did you transfer this call to this person instead of the director. So all of those things of simulation, of asking all of this, help us to realize how the person is going to handle difficult situation as work. Why? Because we as managers hope that never nothing happens. But as you know, it is impossible to have a work environment and to be in a place working where nothing happens. There are always internal issues. There are always issues between departments. There is always angry customers calling about it, complaining about a product or complaining about a service or whatever it is. So it is important to know if the person has um, believe it or not, it sounds a little bit out there, but that the person has the mental capability to deal with. Dealing with difficult people, dealing with upset people, dealing with people that are screaming on the phone. Not a lot of people have the personality to do that, and people feel intimidated when somebody is at the other side of the phone screaming and the person shuts down and the person basically goes blank and doesn't say anything. So we as managers, those are the things that we need to consider, because we need an employee that has the skill to handle this kind of situation. We don't hope that the situation happen, but we need to be prepared for it. And we need to know if the person works well or it doesn't work well or it need improvement. So now we go into what it is background checking. I'm not sure if background checking is required in your countries. So remember that a lot of the things that I mentioned about it, I always use as an example United States and what it is considered and what it is required here in the country. That's what I ask you questions if you have any questions and if you want to share something, because maybe in your country things will be a little bit different. So it's good to learn from all your experiences and when you live in a day-to-day basis in your place of work and in your country. Like, for example, here in the United States, background check is only required for certain positions. Not all the jobs are required, and a lot of employees expect not to be asked about background history. It is the same thing that drug testing. Not all positions require drug testing. So sometimes it can create issues if you work in a company that you know that your position doesn't require a background check, doesn't require a drug test, and they're asking you for those. So as a company, you have to be very careful. Again, that is part going back of the job description. If your company as a policy has a background check for everybody, regardless of what you do, and it has a drug test for everybody regardless of what you do, it is important to put it in the job description. Background checks is mostly because it is connected to the position that you do. For example, federal jobs, any federal job here that you do, governmental job of any case, any jobs that entails with finances and monies and numbers and computer records and privacy records, hospitals, all those jobs, they can ask for background checks because you're going to be handling all this private information about all these people, maybe IDs, passport numbers, addresses, salary information, all of that. So you need to make sure that it's somebody that has never had criminal issues in that aspect. All criminal issues sometimes affect a hiring or a position, but sometimes the background check is mostly for what specifically you're looking for in that position. If you are looking for somebody in a department of finance and in the background check, uh, it shows that this person was embezzling money from the employer, that's a person that you know that you will never hire. So background checks and drug testing works both ways. There are a lot of companies that what is recommended, do the background check first. Even after the first interview, if you have 3 interview process, you do the first interview, you filter the candidates and select, and then for the second interview, you contact the person and say, we're gonna give you a second interview, but we need to do a background check first. So the employer knows that is a one step closer to maybe be part of that company, and people do it. So people that had bad background checks, then you call them and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, we got the result of your background check. It basically, based on the position, your background history or your criminal history, we cannot have you with this criminal history in our job. And basically that's it. And that's how you eliminate somebody. The drug test, a lot of companies do it differently. A lot of companies do drug tests at the same time they're doing background tests if they require. And basically at the end, before hiring the person, they can even go as far and doing another drug test. These are, for example, companies that require driving, like for example, Amazon, FedEx, UPS, all those companies, employees from the post office. You need to make sure that you are hiring somebody that is not going to use drugs in the workplace, because they're going to be high driving the car and then they go into an accident and you're the one facing all the legal aspects or anything. So throughout the interview process, depending on the job, a lot of companies might do, actually even at the end as well, they do another background check, because if the interview process took a long time to do, maybe they went through a process that it was 3 months. Many things can happen in 3 months. So sometimes they do one at the beginning and one at the end. But it is important to do everything else, to track the references, to track employment history. The fact that, for example, the employee say, can we contact your supervisor? And the employee in an application say no, that is actually a big red flag, unfortunately, because then you say, wait a minute, is this person leaving because this person had conflict with the employee, or the supervisor is a horrible boss and that's the person what is leaving? So we as managers or recruiters, we are facing a very, very difficult position when somebody say, don't contact my supervisor. So when the person say, don't contact my supervisor, we can never, never, never assume that it is the employee's fault. So if the employee does not provide anybody else and you're interested in the candidate, that's basically when you can contact the candidate and say, we like your application, we like your resume. You are saying that we're not supposed to contact your supervisor. We are not allowed to ask why. We're not allowed to ask why, but we tell the person, can you give us 2 or 3 additional references within your company that we can call about it? And the president, we can go, that we can do. We can tell the person the references cannot be your coworker. It has to be another director from another department or another supervisor or something like that, that we can just do a reference checks and find out what is going on. So, because all those situations are red flags that if it is somebody that has a lot of conflict, then that is somebody that we do not want. Regarding the investigation of background and reference checks, it is very, very important that we don't go into that gray line, of course, like I was saying, labor law policies, that we don't start investigating and finding out informations that we're not supposed to or we're not allowed. So we have to make sure that we avoid all these mistakes, that we are asking the right questions, that the background check, we are reviewing in the background check the right things, that how intimidating or how difficult it is for us to hire somebody with certain background history, how is going to portray if we hire that company. But at the same time, we have to think that it is fair to give somebody the chance, to give the opportunity and tell the person, hey, it is better for you to do this. So that's when we go into the aspect of all the laws, all the references, how we cover all our bases to make sure that we are hiring the correct person. And talking about a little bit about background checks, then we go into the aspect of what is legal for us to know, what is not legal and appropriate for us to know, how we cover it. This is something that I wanted to add here about the reasons of conducting a background check. All the reasons of conducting a background check has to be connected with something that we need. If we're hiring somebody that is working with, that is going to be working with money, make sure that is nobody that had issues with embezzling, stealing, or something like that. So people might have a lot of things in the background check, but not everything is basically a big no for hiring. So we need to be very aware of what we're looking for. There's actually people within the human resources department that has an employee expert in background checks. A lot of these people, believe it or not, is like ex-police officers or people like that you hired after they retired because of that reason. So they help with that process. That yes, background checks might have a lot of information, but then to make sure that we are not omitting anybody or that we are not discriminating anybody for what they have in the background check. So we have different steps that we can follow to hire people and to interview people. And at the same time, we have different steps to review people to be able to attend those red flags to make sure that we know. Remember, like I was saying before, we have excellent people that look excellent in paper. They can write excellent resumes, they can hire a company, they can do whatever they want, but at the end we know into the aspect of, are you telling me the truth? Now this, I left it because again, this is all comparison with the United States. We actually have positions here in the United States that when you are applying for jobs, they have to do polygraph testing and honesty testing. But especially of this, these are a special testing. Most of it, this is like for military, federal agents, like if you're applying for CIA, you're applying for FBI, Secret Service, all those, top, we are security positions that they do this because they are dealing with federal records, they are dealing with federal information. Like, for example, the Secret Service in the United States is the ones that protect the White House and protects the President of the United States. That is the main job of a Secret Service agent. So they go through 10,000 different psychological testing and screening testing and honesty testing and all of that, because you know that this person is going to be protecting the president of the country. So sometimes different countries, depending on what they do or the level of, like, think about it, for example, somebody in your country that has to go and protect the prime minister of the president or even the senator. Okay, so you are required to have a bodyguard. What type of bodyguard are we hiring? What do we need to interview? What kind of testing this person needs to do to make sure that that is the right candidate? So, and some positions, like we know, they require polygraph tests, um, guidance for lying, making sure that the person is saying that is saying. And one of the final testings that I wanted to mention something about it, even though I did talk at the beginning, is about the ADA. So make sure that the testing meets ADA requirement, make sure that we are prepared in our job for hiring somebody. We do have the right to ask the person, do you have any disability? Yes, we do. And the reason why we do that and we have the right to ask is for us to be prepared. Do you need an interpreter? Do we need a computer? Do we need this? Do we need to remodel the office? Like I was saying to you guys before, do we need to build another bathroom or change this or whatever? So those are important things. And then substance abuse testing is because, yes, of course, most employers control it, they ask it. And as a matter of fact, for substance abuse testing and background testing that I wanted to mention, companies do it randomly. Companies, after they hire somebody, even though they did a background check once in a while, depending on the position, they can do random background checking to see if the person is still in good position to be able to remain in the position. And at the same time, drug abuse, they can do random testing for drugs to make sure that they have employees that they don't use drugs and that they're safe to remain there. So this basically concludes the presentation of everything that is employee screening and rehiring and determination of position. Um, want to know if any of you have any questions about the topic, any questions on what we have covered so far. And also, if you don't have any questions about the presentation, if you have any questions about the class, what I have posted so far, I posted information about week 5. I was finishing, I'm doing a little by little because, believe it or not, at the same time, it's a brand new book that I didn't have the experience before. So I've been reading the book at the same time we're expanding in the class to make sure what it is important for you guys to know about it, what do I mention in the presentations and all of that. So that's why little by little I've been posting information when I'm finished. So I'm trying to see maybe by tomorrow, latest Monday, I have the rest. I'm trying to finish the book this weekend to just outline the rest of the assignments and everything. At least what I didn't stop also, and that's the reason why I haven't finished with all the other assignments, is because the 3 case studies that we needed to review in the class was important for me to select. So I went back and I read all the different cases, review all the information. You notice the papers that I posted and I sent you. I did random questions for each of the cases based on the cases to give you an idea more or less what you guys can use, what you can consider on the case when you're doing the assignments and the presentation. So all that review of all those cases that I sent you, it did took me a little bit of time to read it and analyze it and see how we could do the questioning and what it was important to recommend. So do you have any questions at all about anything that I have mentioned, anything about assignments, the presentation, any questions that I can answer for you?
Yes, there's a question.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Wellington. My question goes this way. Just relocated, for instance, to United States, and after he got a new environment and a job on the finance department. So how can what will be the kind of background check, and how would they determine the level of background check to know if such candidate is qualified for the job?
Here in the United States, for example, jobs and finances, if you are applying for jobs in like a regular company, most of the time, you won't even have to be a citizen of the United States. That is actually something that I didn't cover in this presentation. And it's because then what we're talking about residency in the United States and citizenship in the United States, then we have into immigration law that is a complete different ball game. But for example, here in the United States, there are positions that are regular positions that anybody can apply. And you, for example, as an international person, if you want to come to work in the United States, then the finance positions are better, for example, applying in the private sector and in big companies. Because those companies, if you don't have papers to work in the United States, like if you're not resident or citizen of the United States, then we're talking about something that is called an H1 or H2 visa. So you are working, you are basically applying for a work visa to come and work in the United States, which the country gives them all the time. And people from all over the world come here and work. But the work visas are supported and approved and recommended by the employer. So there is a fee connected to it, and basically there are some papers and documentations that the company has to give. So in this case, you need to make sure that it's a company that has the budget to do that, and that is a company that they do that they hire that. Because maybe then they go into the flexibility that I was talking earlier. Yes, you are in another country, you have the skills, you hire, and they hire you working from home, as long as you're willing to work like the company is scheduled. Like for example, with most of you, I know I have around 6 to 7 hours time difference. Just to give you an idea, right now here in Florida is 11:41 a.m. So then if you're applying for a company in the United States and the company tells you, hey, is from the work schedule is from 8 to 5, then you say, oh my God, so that means that I'm gonna be working from like 1 a.m. your time to whatever time. So all of
Yes.
these things. So if you're prepared to do that and the company is telling you, hey, no, you can work from home, we like you, then you say, okay, I'll do the sacrifice. I'll wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning and I'll do my job. So the difference is that one. And then the other thing, for example, if the company has events here in the United States that you come, then basically the company will help you with the immigration paperwork for you to travel. Like if you have never worked in the United States, they help you with the passport process. They give you the paperwork that you need to provide to the American embassy to get the tourist visas. So a lot of companies, they do events that are less than 3 months, that's what immigration says. So the company will help you for you to come here, for training if they require once a year, or to come here for an event, and they'll make sure that you have the immigration requirements to come here for the event. So all those companies do that. So working with the small companies, applying with the small companies, maybe the small companies will not have the budget or the resources to do that for you, to get involved with immigration, with visa, with all the paperwork that entails. So for example, if you apply for a job in finance in Coca-Cola, or you apply FedEx, Microsoft, Google, companies like that, Amazon, it will be easier for you to have clearly the idea that within the human resources department, they have a department within the department that deals with all these immigration requirements, especially with companies that are so international, that have employees from everywhere and that they hire from everywhere. Like for example, the university where I work full time, we have faculty from all over the world, and we have guest faculty. Sometimes we hire faculty for a year for the faculty to have experience. Like for example, last year I worked with this faculty that was from Holland, and the person was here for a year, and the university helped to do all the paperwork for the person to stay here with us for a year. It was a great experience for us. We all learned from it, and she learned about what it is to be teaching in the United States and the environment of education in the United States. So there are companies that they do that because it's a win-win situation for everybody. You're getting something better, something new, and something completely different that will benefit your company.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Any other questions? Anybody has any other questions? If nobody has any other questions or concern about assignments or the class or anything, then we're gonna give the class as concluded for the day. I really appreciate your attendance and staying with me all this time. Thank you for your support. Remember that I'm here to help if you have any questions via email, the chat rooms in the class, via WhatsApp. And please, like I mentioned at the before, do not fall behind of the assignments. We're already starting week 4. A lot of you have not submitted assignments of week 2 and week 3. So please do so as soon as possible. It doesn't take me a long time to read the assignments and grade them, but it does take you longer and you will need more time if you continue falling behind. So I do recommend you to get a little bit of your time out and start working in the assignments that you have not submitted yet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening or afternoon, wherever you are located. And please remember to contact me if you have any questions about anything. And I am going to stop the recording now.